so much about myself as a leader, as a person, as a mom, as an employee, at the fact that the autonomy that I had along, but also the touching base with people too. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Huge paradigm shifts of how I saw the world and how I could actually affect change, but also how change is not as fast as it looks. There's no musical montage like in the movie. Where people are, and then it's done. No, but if you stay at it and you work with people, the seeds that you plant today, like I go back to some of the things I did when I was an ally 11 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that project that we did in that park, it kept going. Like people stepped in and the communities. Yeah.
Guess what? We're back with another AmeriCorps alum on the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. Yes, we are doing it. We are in the special series of the 2024 Recruitment Extravaganza, where we're highlighting AmeriCorps alums who are recruiting for AmeriCorps members for the service year of 2024 to 2025. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Nicki Fiocco. This is the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, and I am the brainchild and the founder of AmeriCorps Connections, where we bring AmeriCorps alum to really journal or journey down their service year and what they experienced, and to find out what they're up to now. And I just felt like we should do a special series because between the months of May and like August-ish is a really high recruitment time for our AmeriCorps programs across the country. And I just really wanted to put the programs out there and give them an opportunity to talk about their service year, because they're all alums, and the opportunities that are out there for future AmeriCorps members. So I'm an AmeriCorps alumni. I served with Volunteer Maryland as a volunteer coordinator, and it totally changed the trajectory of my life. If you go back to several episodes, you'll hear about my resume. I don't need to go into it now, but I went from an AmeriCorps member to director of an AmeriCorps program to being appointed as Governor Hogan's director of his Office of Service and Volunteerism for several years during the pandemic. Yeah, that's a whole other topic that we
can imagine.
Yeah, we need to have a special therapy group for everybody that was like managing AmeriCorps programs.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, totally. But before we get started, I just wanted to obviously give a shout out to Dan Medevere from Time or Money, who was the first person. He's an NCCC alum, and he stepped up right away. He said, your podcast needs to be on all the platforms. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or any of the other places you get your podcast, thank you, Dan Medevere, Time or Money Services. And also very excited this year to be partnering with the Do Good, Be Good folks, Sharon Tewksbury Bloom and her all AmeriCorps alum staff, who are supporting the back end of this podcast. And it really helps me get more interviews out, more information out. And thank you so much. If you're interested in contributing to this podcast in any way, reach out to me, because we're looking to make sure that this continues. We're getting a lot of momentum. But as we get started here, we're very lucky because we have Candace Jusino that is with us today with Public Allies. And there's quite a journey there. I don't know if folks can see. If you're listening to this on the podcast, jump over to the YouTube. She's got a really nice t-shirt on there that's reflecting her Public Allies service. Candace, let's just start with how did you find out about AmeriCorps, and how did you get, I like to say, captured by national service?
I know. So Public Allies was my first encounter with AmeriCorps. I had heard about Teach for America, but I didn't know that Teach for America was an AmeriCorps program. But I hadn't heard of AmeriCorps as a concept. So here I am after it's end of 2012, early 2013. I was working for a mortgage company that kind of went belly up because of the housing crisis, all that was happening in the early 2010s. And I was like, am I going to stop fighting to be in the financial industry? Because I was doing it for 10, 12 years, working between pensions and banking and finance and insurance. And I was like, I love the people, but I don't want to keep fighting to be in this. And it had been the third time I had been laid off in 12 years in that industry. And so I'm looking for work. And my husband is looking too, because he also got laid off at the same time. And
oh my gosh,
it was just, and we had a 2-year-old daughter. And a 12-year-old daughter. Me and my husband met in high school, and we're native New Yorkers, but we ended up in Delaware for cost savings. And so my mom moved down to Delaware too around that time, stayed with her, struggling, and he's looking for work, and he finds Public Allies being advertised on Craigslist, and talking about leadership and helping community and working in a nonprofit and the importance of asset building and collaboration. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so I saw that we're going to be at a job fair later that month. So I'm like, I find out where it is. I go straight there, and lots of tables. I go straight to the gentleman. His name was Tommy Fisher Klein. He used to be in this role, and he's moved on to other part of the university. And I'm like, what is this? Because I'm such a cynic. I'm like, is this for real? That I'm going to get paid to get trained and to learn how to be in this industry. My mom and dad were teachers, aunts too. I knew about that side of public work, but I didn't understand that you could work in the nonprofit industry, and this would be my entryway into that. And he talks to me, I apply, I go through several interviews. So we really try to make sure that there's a good fit for people. So what we do an individual interview with our folks, then we put them in a group interview, because a lot of the work we do is very team-based. And so we'll have a pool of candidates, about 5 to 10 people come together and do a real fun project together as their group interview. But a lot of people are scared, but then they end up having a lot of fun doing this scenario, working on that together. And then we have folks meet the different nonprofits once they get through the group interview, and try to get as much interviews as they can through introductions that they do with the nonprofits. And then through there, they get interviews, and then we do matches. We do our magic. So we'll have our candidates rank their top 3 to 5 agencies they want to be with. We get that info as a staff. And back then I would have submitted it to the staff that was recruiting me. And then we make matches based on the organizations also, how they rank the candidates that they've interviewed. And so I ended up getting my top 1 or 2 choices. And I ended up with community and schools as my nonprofit where I was an ally. Yeah. So each ally has an apprenticeship, which is a big chunk of what they do in the 10 months that they serve, because we only do the full term AmeriCorps program. And I worked on capacity building, because that's our focus. And what they needed at communities and schools was community engagement around their mentorship programs and the services for keeping kids in high school in a certain district called the Red Clay District in Wilmington. And so they had site folks at each school, but they needed someone to coordinate the college and career readiness and to get that all off the ground, because they just didn't have the capacity. And so I was able to step in, do a lot of community engagement, set up job shadowings and all kinds of stuff for all the different high schools in Wilmington, and even work on an Operation Christmas Wish, where we offered 100 families, and each family had a couple and kids, toys, food, clothing for 100 families, where we wrapped it. It was an insane amount of varied work just to support the nonprofit and learn as you go.
Isn't it fun to reflect on your service year? And
I haven't think about it in a while.
And
I'm like,
hey, I want to let you know about an event Goodwill Northern New England is doing as part of their efforts to build a community of AmeriCorps alums everywhere. On July 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern, Vista alum Maya Williams shares the story of her service, their best writing tips, and the best tips for adjusting to life after service. During their service at Equality Maine, Maya developed programming for LGBTQ plus youth. She then became a published poet and Portland's 7th poet laureate. If you're ready to join a community of AmeriCorps alumni, then don't delay. Register for this free event today by clicking in the show notes. For sure.
Yeah, I know. And I feel like I need to back up a little bit, because I'm like thinking about my service, but I'm also have the hat of recruiter and like trying to make sure that I'm clearly stating the 4 parts of our program. When you're in the program, you're like just doing it, right?
Let's stay in your service year. So for now, what was something that you walked away with during your service year?
So much. So I had a huge paradigm shift. And I feel like you referenced this a little bit too when you were first talking. I don't know if it was offline or when we were recording, but so I left high school, and I was supposed to be college bound, smart high school, whatever. But I had my daughter, like I got pregnant my senior year. And so I ended up foregoing college and just working. And I just did work that wasn't like my dream job, but make money. And so for the first time in being in an AmeriCorps program, not only did I get to serve others, but I also noticed that I could have influence and change things and work with groups to actually get things done. A lot of time, like you were saying, AmeriCorps, get things done. Because a lot of times when you're in the corporate sector, and nothing against this, my husband still works for banks, there's a process and there's always a process. But I feel like that grassroots, let's just come together, let's figure out our resources, and you have this and I have that, and let's get together and brainstorm and put it together and then just get it out to people.
Get it done.
Yeah, and just get it done. And then that fact that, the things that I had to offer, despite the fact that maybe I didn't finish college, or that that there was still value in what I could bring to my community, and that I could grow myself at the same time. Oh my God. Because I thought, when I did this program, I already worked 12, 13 years. I already know what it is to work, because there's a component of a program where you're doing professional development. But I learned so much about myself as a leader, as a person, as a mom, as an employee, at the fact that the autonomy that I had along, but also the touching base with people too. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Huge paradigm shifts in how I saw the world and how I could actually affect change, but also how change is not as fast as it looks. There's no musical montage like in the movies, where people are, and then no, it's done. No, but if you stay at it and you work with people, the seeds that you plant today, like I go back to some of the things I did when I was an ally 11 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that project that we did in that park, it kept going. Like people stepped in the communities. Yeah.
I love that we share a similar path, that we did our AmeriCorps year later in life, because a lot of times people look at these programs and they're like, oh, you come out of college, you don't know what you're going to do. Da, da, da. No, folks, I thought it was a job. And then I was like, why am I going to training with all these other people? I thought I was the volunteer coordinator. But to your point, the professional development that came along with it, and the cohort feel and the confidence and the just everything about it was so supportive. And you just don't get that. I said something on a podcast a while ago, and I don't remember which one it was, but I said AmeriCorps is the only job or position or service opportunity that you have that as soon as you start serving, everybody around you is helping you find your next job. Right? Like everybody's like, you're here for a year, let's figure out what you're going to do after this. And everybody's like pouring into you. They know that you're not going to be there forever. And I think that's something that is super empowering, because we're really coming out of this weird industrial age where we worked at jobs for 20, 30 years, and that's what we decided to do. And really now it's like a kind of a nomad where you're just like, what do I want to experience? I'll just share real quick, and then I want to get back to how Public Allies brought you back to your next story. So I did a little bit of career coaching, and somebody that I was career coaching shared with me that she had a jobs bucket list. So she literally had a bucket list of all these jobs that she wanted to do. And so she was an AmeriCorps member, and we would check in every once a month or something. And we'd check in, and she wanted to be a bartender, and she was a bartender. And then I checked into next month, and she was a flight attendant, and she wants to be a scuba instructor. And we need to think about what are the experiences that we want to have throughout our life, because life is quick and we want to experience and make the impact that we can when we can do it. So anyways, that was a tangent, but yes, 100%. And I love that we share a similar experience where we did do AmeriCorps later in life, and it really helped us orient to what we wanted to do from that point on. So real quick though, I don't think you touched on what you did as an ally. So what was your roles and responsibilities as an ally during your service year?
Yes, the apprenticeship part of my 10 months was I was partnered with communities and schools. On a typical week, Monday through Thursday, I would report to the office where my boss was oh my God, I'm losing my train of thought. The
principal?
She was the manager of the Wilmington division of communities and schools. So it was Community Schools Delaware. and there was someone who was in charge of the whole state, and then she was in charge of the northern part of Delaware, mostly focusing in Wilmington. Her name was Kia. So I almost had two managers. I had my manager at Communities and Schools, but then Public Allies, I had a program manager, Tommy, the person I mentioned before, Tommy Fisher-Klein, who was a huge support and help in my development as my program manager in the program. And so I would work on was community engagement. So it was community events, and they needed help with getting more mentors. And so there were 10 high schools in our region, and the numbers and so there were site directors at each high school, and so they have to deal with the students directly doing direct service. What they needed was the capacity help of community engagement, getting volunteers to be mentors, getting organizations and companies to do job shadowing. So we had Discover Card do some job shadowing for the high school students, and we had high school students go to an AT&T corporate office, and they did training alongside employees there for a full day, set up career and college readiness. So for the different high schools we scheduled like bus tours so the students wouldn't have to pay for it because of Communities and Schools as a nonprofit. Right. They were in charge of doing wraparound services. So that was what I focused on. And I worked alongside the regional director for Wilmington, because we have a focus on leadership development in our particular capacity building type work. And I'm like, lead, I don't even know this industry. But the cool thing is that they just push you out there with a safety net, because I had my program manager to meet with. My program manager, I saw them every Friday at our trainings that we were Friday trainings where the cohort is everywhere in the state. And then we all come back to our office in Wilmington and have a leadership development training and all that. And so we saw him there. And then he would come to where I was working at Communities and Schools and meet with me and my boss around every 4 to 6 weeks. So it was such a comprehensive, and the reflection that I did, I was forced to write my reflections every month and to reflect with my program manager every 4 to 6 weeks. So you just had no chance, you had no choice but to grow and to develop alongside your cohort too, which you mentioned before. So that's how I did Communities and Schools. And then the other part of the program, in our cohort of 30 in Delaware, we split us into mini teams, and each team is assigned a project in the city of Wilmington. And so my first year, because I did Public Allies twice, actually, that's how much I loved it. That's wild. First year, we did Edgemore was my project. It's a community in Upper Wilmington, almost near the PA line. And that working on a community garden and just get a safe place for kids to play. And we ended up getting Newcastle County to actually commit to taking a space in the community and actually making a park, because there was so many kids in that neighborhood, but no safe park and cars going crazy. And so we were able to do that. And then my second year, we were on the west side of Wilmington working with the community on a after school project. And we partnered with some religious organizations on that side. And so, on top of being at the apprenticeship, and doing the training, you nightlight, night and moonlighting, I should say, I'm sorry. And you're doing this community project with live community members, which is completely separate from your apprenticeship. So any one of these things could be its own job in this industry. And you kind of cram that in 10 months. So you come out like a butterfly. You're metamorphosizing into, if that's a word. But it's late.
That's so good. I love that. It's true. It's in that image, and you do. And I always encourage service members to just try things, like just try them during your service year. So I feel like I knew when I first chatted with you that we would end up talking way too much, because I feel the vibe. Yes to everything you're saying. So Public Allies, you did Public Allies. What were your next steps after your service year? And then let's roll into kind of what you're recruiting for and the opportunities that folks have now. So what did you do after Public Allies?
Like I said, I did 2 terms, and we save like 4 to 5 spots each year for people we call second year allies. You have a little bit more responsibility, but I ended up being at the same nonprofit. And then the end of my second year, June of 2015, that spring, the person who was in the administrative role was like, I'm leaving to do something else, another department. You should apply. And I was like, me? Really? Oh my God. And then I was like, okay. And then I applied, and some of the staff that was there already, they were like happy that I wanted to apply. So that felt good. And I went straight from being in the program June 30th of 2015 to then July 6th of
That's
2015 being a
oh
staff
wow,
member.
that's funny.
And a lot of people would have been like, oh, that's different. Didn't you want to do something different before you just jumped in? But I had spent all my 20s and early 30s just working all kinds of crazy little jobs
Yeah,
trying to survive, that a little stability was actually nice. And I think I was
yes.
ready for it to just, okay, I'm working here and I'm with this team. And even if my job might change a little bit, I have similar idea of what we're
Same
doing.
people, right.
Yeah, yeah. And then being in the program right before that, some of the connections I made were
Yep.
now going to be peers for me. And so that, and then getting to see alum all the time and run alum events, which was really cool. So yeah. And so I started, like I said, administrative role at first, and then ended up adding on being in the ally recruitment and compliance, fun stuff. But yeah, it's so cool to meet everyone and be like, oh my God, like this program changed me. Please know that there's still hope for you no matter where you are in life or what's happened to you in the past. This really gives you an opportunity to take your gifts and talents and use them to help the
Hmm.
world. So with
Absolutely.
support.
That's great. So you rolled right into Public Allies, but were you still with the did you were
Yeah,
you with communities?
so public allies. Okay, so I knew I needed to break this down a little bit more. So I'm sorry if I didn't like
No,
make it
it was
clear.
good because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know that your service site was communities and schools, but then you went to Public Allies, and then was that Public Allies in what is it, Delaware, University of Delaware?
Okay, so here's my year actually. I
I
should
love
probably,
it.
yeah, so that was me as a second year right there, and my other second years, class
Love
of
it.
2015, and
That's
that's
so
our yeah.
cool.
And so what I'll show you from the brochure is everybody's assigned a different nonprofit for their
Yes.
10 months, right? So my nonprofit for my 10 months, and you'll see me right
Community.
there, was
Yes.
communities.
In schools. Yes.
Yeah. So every Monday through Thursday, and for the 2 years, I could have went to a different nonprofit my second year, but I wanted to stay, and
Yeah.
they wanted me to stay. Some people change, but for both years, I stayed with communities and schools and worked on community engagement. And so I was a public ally for them. So yeah, so everyone is a public ally. Public allies is an AmeriCorps program.
Yep.
Yep, yep. And so we have
Served
to
in the
say
schools.
capacity building. And so because we don't do direct service and we focus on capacity building, they didn't need someone to work with students because they had that already. They needed someone to
Mhm.
build the infrastructure so that the students had the services of career and college readiness, of job shadowing, of all the things that they
Right.
needed in order to feel like they could get through high school. Because we also provided things like uniforms, and talked about the Operation Christmas Wish. There was a fund to pay if students were having issues at home with like keeping electricity on. The
Wow.
nonprofit would, communities and schools would do that. And so I was helping support and make sure that the site staff was able to focus on that. And I focused on, okay, let's get these buses for the college tours. Let's get some job shadowing opportunities. Let's get them to get some mentors coming to the different schools. Let's get that scheduled. Let's get them the background checks
Right.
done for those mentors. So that was like, so they could focus more on the hands-on with the students. So
Right.
there are some allies who might work with students, but nonprofits vary. We have nonprofits that are not educational based. So as long as you're a
So
501c3 and you have a capacity need, and you can host an ally, and you can be
yeah,
an ally
so
that's being hosted.
I think that's a really good segue to go to your role now at University of Delaware, where you're partnering those allies with organizations through the university and supporting the community. So what does the program look like that you're recruiting for now? And who are some of the partners that you're partnering with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm recruiting for Public Allies Delaware right now for folks who can start on September 3rd of 2025. We just had our initial kind of priority deadline pass on the 15th of May, but I still need applications.
Okay.
And we are going to be taking rolling applications all summer until we get our last 10 to 15 slots filled.
Okay.
So we'll have about 15 slots filled later this summer, probably mid-June, but all of June and July will be rolling application. And to apply to our program, you want to go to apply.publicallies.org.
Okay.
And you want to select the Delaware site because Public Allies is a national organization with many sites. I'm at the Delaware site. We just celebrated 30 years in Delaware. So we had our big party and everything for it. But yeah,
Cool.
that's what I'm recruiting for. For 10 months, we are a full-term AmeriCorps program, which means 1,700 hours of service. And if you break that down per week, like 42 to 44 hours per week, the exact number is 42.5, but you want to get around that time. The stipend here is 2,200 a month. And we also cover health insurance. So if you need health insurance, we're an AmeriCorps program, so we will cover your premiums. It won't come out of your stipend. And we give forbearance of student federally backed loans. And at the end of the 10 months, the education award right now is at $7,395 for people who start for class of 2025, like any other full-term AmeriCorps program. But the cool thing that at our 30th anniversary, that they just announced, they don't even have any material for this yet, is because Public Allies Delaware site is under the University of Delaware's Biden School Public Policy. If somebody finishes our program and goes into the Biden School to study undergrad or postgrad, they will match the education award.
Wow.
Yeah, they just announced that at our 30th anniversary.
Okay, so for folks that are listening, I want you to understand what was just said. So if you do an AmeriCorps program with Public Allies, with Candace, with the University of Delaware, and you finish your service year, and then you go back in and you apply to do a program through the, what is it, public policy.
Yeah, yep. Our public
they
policy
will
department.
match your $7,395. So that's $14,000 that you will not have. No, it's more than that, at 15 something or 16 something that you will, I don't do math, that you will not have to pay towards that program. So, and you're getting a year of experience. This is an amazing opportunity. Wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It was so exciting. Senator Coons actually came to he's our local senator for Delaware, and he's a huge AmeriCorps advocate.
Who's the name?
Senator Coons.
Coons, yes.
Yeah. Yes. He was at our 30th anniversary gala we had on the 26th of April. So it's just about a month ago. And they made that announcement with the dean of the Biden School for Public Policy. Wow. And so, yeah, so Public Allies Delaware, we're an AmeriCorps program. Our site happens to run, or our backend stuff is under the University of Delaware. Yeah. So technically, if you looked at my pay stub or whatever, you'd see that it's the University of Delaware pay stub. But our funding is through AmeriCorps. We run an AmeriCorps program in the University of Delaware. This AmeriCorps program, Public Allies. So if you do our program, Public Allies Delaware, our site, not any other AmeriCorps program, though I love all the other ones, but if you do our program, then because we are part of the University of Delaware, our dean, which we are under, has committed to do that. And Senator Coons is also on board with making sure that the university gets the funding for that.
Pretty awesome. Exciting. Yeah. That's very exciting. And Senator Coons has been behind so many policies with AmeriCorps. When I was with the Maryland governor's office on service and volunteerism, he was a massive ally, and they were always, he was always starting the letters and everything. So that's very cool. That was just a great cherry on top, where it was like your service year, your experience, and then now you're recruiting people to get involved, and they get this wonderful opportunity to get an education, and some of it's paid for by AmeriCorps and also matched by the University of Delaware. So this is like a double, triple, I don't know, like recruitment, like for the University of Delaware and also Public Allies and all of the things.
Yeah, so I don't want anyone to think that we are academic program at UD. So you're apprenticing as an AmeriCorps member. You just had your stipends coming from UD, because our funding from AmeriCorps and Public Allies National comes through UD for back-end purposes.
Gotcha.
But you're not earning credit while you're doing our 10-month program. We just happen to be a program running under this department at UD. But there's that opportunity once you're done your first, if you decide to do a second term. A lot of us on staff, 3 out of 4 of us on staff right now here in Delaware have done Public Allies or alum of the program, and have done 2 years, which is interesting. We really love it. But but you get the great experience and access to University of Delaware's infrastructure if you needed it.
And I think that's a really good what was I going to say? A really good differentiation. No, that's not the word. Anyways,
I get you.
no, it's important for folks to know that they're not necessarily going through the University of Delaware, but it's the infrastructure of the program. But it's also a really great example of how higher education institutions can and do partner with communities. So
Yes.
they house this program, which allows community members or folks that are moving into the area or whatever to have this opportunity. So the infrastructure
Yes.
and the back end stuff is really where the sausage is made, right? Like
Yes.
the grants management, the funding, the all of that stuff, the paychecks and everything that you mentioned are the things that like make these programs possible. So Candace, you have been such a great representative of the program, Public Allies, and everything that you've experienced through AmeriCorps. Before we wrap up, what is there anything else that you want folks to know about the program or your experience? Obviously, we're on the same vibe for AmeriCorps because we were both like, it changed our lives.
Yes, it absolutely did. I would say that don't limit yourself because, oh, I should have finished school, or maybe I should have gotten a postgrad, or maybe I should have done this with my career, or you think all these shoulds. I say try to, if you really have a love for community, for public service, if you want to learn about leadership and the insides of how a nonprofit works, because we do all kinds of training on that as well in our program, like
Love it.
absolutely try to do Public Allies Delaware. And the cool thing is our alum, I didn't even get to talk about, we've been in Delaware for 30 years. First class, graduated in 1994. And so we've had people who still live in Delaware or nearby. Elizabeth Lockman, Tizzy Lockman is a Delaware senator. We've had people run for governor. We have an AmeriCorps member who was on city council for the city of Wilmington. And then we've had people go to the private sector with all the information they learned, because nonprofit work, people think of it as, oh, it's so different. It's just business that focuses on a mission.
Yes.
There you
Yeah.
still need advertising, they do the same thing. So you get this great amount of skill, a small amount of time that you really can apply. It's transferable skills, leadership, communication, collaboration, continuous learning. All these things are transferable skills, whether you want to apply it in the public sector or nonprofit work, or if you want to go to the for-profit sector. So yeah, I would encourage you to do it. Don't worry about how old you are or anything, like, or too young. Like, we work with anyone wherever you come from, as long as you're 18 and up, which is the AmeriCorps rule, and you have to be a
Yes.
U.S. citizen or permanent resident. That's AmeriCorps. That's another topic for another day. I feel like we need to help our
Yes.
dreamers, but yeah, for my Latinos.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. This is just really inspirational and all of the different perks. And you said housing, right? Did you say housing?
No.
No. Okay, I'll delete that. That was I finished an interview before this, so we'll delete that out.
There's one site for Public Allies in Colorado that does that.
Housing.
But
Okay,
yeah, but
got
the
you.
rest of us, the other 10 of us, it's the
Yeah,
stipend. And we'll try to encourage people to room and connect
right.
that way. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll just
unfortunately,
edit that
no.
out. That was an error on my part.
You're fine.
But anyways, this was great. Thank you
And
so
I
much
threw
for
the
your
flyer in there too, and the link to application and
perfect.
information.
Yeah, we'll
Mhm.
have all of the links in the show notes for both the podcast and the YouTube. So I just want to thank you for your time. I know you had a lot of hats to juggle around, and both of us were like, but thank you so much for being on the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, Candace. It was really great to have you and learn more
Aw,
about
thank
the public
you.
allies. And so for folks that found this content interesting, share it, like it, love it, reach out to us and let us know how you're using this information. This is a program that, yes, it's 30 years old. It's funded through the federal government. And I will just say that this is a way to get connected in your community. So if you're feeling like you're not connected, the pandemic really messed up your life, you're feeling a little depressed, I'll even say, and this is really a way to connect with people and make an impact and pour into yourself. So Candace, this has been such a pleasure. And for all the folks still listening, thank you so much. And we'll be back with another AmeriCorps alum talking about something.
Thank you so much, Nicki, for
everybody.
having me.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.